You know, here in Long Beach, California, every year for the past, wow, I don't even know, 30 or 40 years, something like that, they have the Toyota Grand Prix. And it happens to take place just beneath where I live, and it's extremely loud. And one of the competitions that they have is called drifting. And so those of you that are familiar with this is when these really loud, powerful cars literally just drift around the curves and the turns, and often they drift beside each other, and sometimes they tear up their cars. And it's really cool to watch, it's really exciting, and it's really loud. And so when you're driving in a car and you're professional and you know how to drift, that can be very exciting and it can be fun. It can also be dangerous. But going through life, drifting is not very fun. Drifting, in fact, can cause us to waste resources, to lose opportunities, to diminish our impact, our potential impact on other people. My name is Michael Williams, and I want to thank you for joining me again in this series entitled Breaking Through Your Limitations. You and I have an opportunity to be more. We actually have a responsibility to be more. Why? Because we've been given time. We're here, right? When your time is over, you're not here anymore. We've been given talents. We've been given experiences. We've been given resources. And the reason that we have those resources, at least one of the major reasons, is so that we can invest them. And whenever we invest something, we are expecting, we're hoping to get a return. So everything that you and I have, we are to invest it so that we can get a return. And often that return comes back to us in a variety of different ways, not just in the way that we think. So we have a responsibility and we have an opportunity to be more, to do more, to impact more people. But one of the things that stops us is when we drift through life. So what I'd like to do is just a really fast review of what we talked about in the first message. And if you didn't see that, then I want to encourage you to go do that. But in the first message, we talked about three major areas in which we tend to be limited. That is, we tend to be limited, or we tend to have barriers or obstacles that prevent us from being more, from doing more. And these three areas have to do with a lack of clarity. We're not sure where we're going. We're not sure why we're going there. If we know where we're going, we're not sure how to get there. Another area, and we're going to break these down and talk about them in detail, one of these in this message. Another one is a lack of confidence. We simply don't believe that we're able to do something. I don't think I can do it. I'm not sure that I can do it. In some cases, we say, I can't do it. And then third and final is a lack of courage. I'm afraid to do it. What happens if I do it? So today, probably in today and in the next message, we're going to be looking at this first guy right here, and that is a lack of clarity. So when we have a lack of clarity, what we're talking about is we're talking about drifting through life. Drifting through life. So think of it like you're out there on a water and you're just drifting and floating. Where are you going to end up? You're going to end up wherever. Sometimes that's okay, but going through life, that's not okay, because again, what ends up happening is we end up wasting precious resources. Wasting precious resources when we drift. So let's dig into this a little bit. And let's talk about what we mean when we say drifting. When we're talking about drifting, we're talking about it in essentially a few areas, right? We're talking about drifting in a few areas. One is we're talking about having a lack of direction. Where do I want to go in life? What do I want my life to look like? So we're drifting, which means we don't have clear, what? Direction. We don't have clear direction, so we don't know where we're going. And if we don't know where we're going, and you've heard this before, then we end up anywhere, right? We can end up anywhere. And again, sometimes that's fun if you're going on an adventure and you set out, your purpose is to just drift, just to go out and just go wherever you want to go, wherever you end up. That's okay. But most of us don't want to go through our entire life like that, right? So when we're drifting, we have a lack of direction. We also have a lack of clarity, right? So let's just say we have an idea of the general direction that we want to go in, but we don't have an address. Right? So it's not real clear of where we're going. We have an idea, yeah, I want to go south, but where are you going south, right? South is pretty big. So we have a lack of clarity. Third, there is a lack of, sorry, it looks like an E, but it's actually a focus. There's a lack of focus. So we can be clear, I can see something clearly. I'm looking out my window and I can see things clearly, right? But I can see a lot of things clearly. But what we want to do is we want to focus in on something. So imagine you're looking through a pair of binoculars and you can see a lot of stuff clearly. But now what we want to do is we want to focus. So now imagine a magnifying glass where we zoom in and we focus on one particular thing. So drifting doesn't allow us to really have a particular direction. We're just kind of out there. It doesn't allow us to have clarity of where we're going, right? Because we're drifting. And it doesn't allow us to focus, to focus our time, to focus our talents, to focus our energy, to focus our finances. Now, the question is, why do people drift? And what are the effects of drifting on our lives and on the lives of those around us? Why do people drift? What are the effects of drifting? When we drift, and we all probably have drifted, one of the reasons is because we haven't stopped to ask ourselves, where do I want to go? And why do I want to go in that direction? We haven't really stopped to ask ourselves that question, where do I want to go? And sometimes this can be a result of people telling us where to go. So sometimes growing up, we have parents and we have friends and teachers who tell us, well, you should do this, and you should go in this way, and make sure you do this, right? And so our lives have been controlled, in a sense, directed by other people. So it becomes very difficult for us to make decisions on our own. Sometimes people just end up in careers and they end up in jobs because they decided, well, I don't want to take this career because it's going to require me to do this, or I have to go get a master's degree. Or I don't want to take this job because I'm not good at this, or because I'm not good at speaking. Remember, my area is speaking. So some people choose certain careers based on the fact that, well, I'm not a good speaker, or I stutter, or I have a fear of speaking, so I don't want to do that. And so they end up getting into jobs that they really don't want to be in, that maybe they're not even really called to be in. And so people end up kind of drifting through different careers because they have steered away from things that they really wanted to do, right? And a part of this can come from fear, so we're going to talk about this. And then another reason is because people have been telling them what to do. And so people have been giving them direction, saying, okay, you do this. So they're not able to really they are able, but they haven't been making decisions on their own. So those are just a couple of reasons why sometimes people find themselves drifting and not having clear direction. They haven't really asked themselves, right, where do I want to go? Now, another reason and another thing that can happen is a lack of clarity. So in other words, they have a general idea of where they want to go, but they haven't clarified it yet. It's not real clear. It's still kind of foggy. Well, I think I want to work with numbers, right? I'd like to work with numbers. Okay, but what would you like to do with numbers? Do you want to be a forensic accountant? Do you want to work for a big company, a small company? What do you want to do with numbers? So it's about gaining greater clarity in what you want to do. And a part of that comes down to asking yourself and exploring different options, right? Sometimes we don't really know, until we actually get in there and try different things. We say, oh, okay, I hate this, but I really like this. You would have never known unless you got in and tried it. So sometimes we have a general direction, right? We have a general direction, and we want to continue to pursue that direction until it becomes clearer and clearer. And sometimes that can only happen after we get going down that pathway, in that direction. Makes sense? All right, we've got direction and clarity. Another thing that happens to people is then there's no focus. There's no focus, so they keep getting distracted. So they say, yeah, okay, I'd like to do this, and I have a clear idea of what I like to do, and then they start doing it, and they find out that it's really hard, that it takes a lot of time, that it's going to take longer than what they thought, or something else really, really exciting comes along. Oh my goodness, yeah, I want to do this. So they keep getting distracted. They might be getting distracted by the people in their lives. People keep pulling them in this direction, out there. They might get distracted because they want to make more money, or they want to make money fast, or they want to do something that's easier. So there are lots of things that can distract us. Sometimes life just distracts us, right? So people, all of us, sometimes drift because we don't have a clear direction, or if we do have a clear direction, then we often are unable to stay focused. And some of the reasons could be because people have been telling us what to do, and we've just been following that, never really asking ourselves, what do I really want to do? Now, here's something else that I want us to look at regarding this drifting. Once you have a direction, and once you're clear on that direction, and once you're focused, then you want to ask yourself this question. You want to ask yourself, why do I want to do this? Right? So sometimes people are very, very clear. They know exactly where they want to go. They know how they want to get there. But they haven't asked themselves, why? Why do I want to do this? And when we ask the question why, and you keep asking that, it drills down to our core values. That's what's important, what we value, right? What's important to us. And I've been going through this process myself recently. I go through it at various stages of my life. But recently I've been asking myself, why do I want to do this particular project or this particular career? And in asking myself that, 3 core values presented themselves. Like, what is it? In fact, here's a question that I want you to ask yourself. Here's a question. What could you see yourself doing in the next 5 to 10 years? Now, you've heard all these questions before, but I want you to think about this. Whatever you're doing now, or whatever you're planning on doing, can you see yourself doing it in the next 5 to 10 years? Ask yourself that and be completely honest. Now, what you're going to have to do is you're going to probably have to remove obstacles, things that may be presenting themselves that say, well, yeah, I'd really like to do this, but, right? It's like, yeah, but, and the but can have to do with money. It could have to do with time. That's going to take too long. It could have to do with energy. That's going to be too hard. Or it could have to do with fear of judgment, which we're going to get into. What are other people going to say if I decide to do that? Okay? So, as you're asking yourself this question, what would I really like to be doing for the next 5 to 10, not in the next, but what would I like to be doing for the next 5 to 10 years of my life? And you ask yourself that, and you be totally honest, then all of a sudden, all of these limitations, all of these obstacles and barriers are going to start to present themselves. And some of those will be things like, well, I don't have enough money to do that. Or I don't have access to do that. Or I probably can't do that because of my color, because of my gender, because of my age, because I don't have the right education, because I don't live in this particular area. Or it could be because it's going to take too long. It could be because, oh, it's going to be too difficult. It's going to take a lot of time and energy and hard work. Or it might be, well, if I do that, what is this person going to say? And what is that person going to say? So all these obstacles. And then what you'll find yourself doing is narrowing your choices. You'll find yourself actually saying, okay, well, I'd really like to be doing that, but so therefore I'll just do this, right? How many times have you done that? I know I've done that. Plenty of times. Did it recently, right? So what you want to do is you want to come back and say, no, let me remove all of those potential barriers or limitations or obstacles. And let me just ask myself, what's really important to me? What are my core values, right? What are my core values? One of my core values was freedom, right? Freedom to move around, to do what I want to do when I want to do it, to work from anywhere. But that core value is also important for me to help other people with. I want to help other people be free to do the things that they want to do. Another core value of mine has to do with passion. I want to do something that I'm passionate about, because there's lots of things that I can do, but if I'm not passionate about it, I'll run out of steam. And then I'll end up saying, okay, now what do I do? Because I really have no desire to do that. And then a third value of mine has to do with transformations. I want to do something that's transformative, that's transforming, that's really changing. I don't just want to put out information. I don't want to just create courses. I don't want to just do stuff. I want to do something that changes lives. I want to do something that changes my life as well. So those are three very important values for me. So I had to ask myself, what would I like to see myself doing over the next 5 to 10 years that have those three values at the center? Okay, so you have to, and your values are going to be different. Don't let anyone tell you, well, your values should be trust, your values should be love. Yes, of course, those things are all critically important, but I want you to be honest with yourself and say, what's important to me? Because here's what's going to happen. If you choose values based on what other people tell you they should be, your true values are going to rise to the top eventually. Anyway, they're going to rise to the top, and you're going to end up doing what you really want to do anyway. Isn't that true? We always do what we really want to do. Somebody can persuade you to do something, but ultimately you're going to do what you really want to do because your true values are going to rise to the top. So ask yourself that question, and it'll become clear to you, or clearer to you, the direction that you want to do it, and it'll become more clear and more focused. Now here's something else that I want us to briefly touch on, and we'll jump into this deeper in the next session, in the next message. And this has to do with the fact that sometimes you're not real clear on what you're supposed to be doing, on what you're called to do. You have an idea, and sometimes this can depend on your age and your experience, but you have an idea, but it's not real clear yet. But that shouldn't stop you from moving in that general direction. Because sometimes your calling, right, whatever it is that you're called to do, your vocation, which comes from the word vocare, which means to call, it presents itself, it becomes more clearer as you move through it. So remember this, your calling becomes clearer based on the impact it has on those that you serve. Your calling becomes clearer based on the impact it has on the people that you serve. So sometimes you're doing something and all of a sudden it just starts becoming clearer and clearer that this is what you're supposed to be doing. Now here's something else I want you to remember. And I learned this from a very, very wealthy multimillionaire who was my mentor for a little while. And he told me that I needed to do some things that I didn't want to do. And I'll reveal this to you now. One of those things is, he said, you don't want to be known as Michael Williams, the video guy that just puts out a lot of videos, right? Because I just love putting out videos. I still do. But the one thing I didn't want to do was one-on-one coaching. Why? Time and energy. And fear of judgment, right? You know, working with someone one-on-one, it's a lot more accountability there. It's a lot harder. It takes a lot more time, a lot more energy. And I said, well, I can't make as much money because it's going to be limited, right? It's hard to scale that up. So all those things. So I really don't want to do that. But he said, you want to be known as Michael Williams, the guy that solves the stuttering problem. And the only way you're going to do that is to work with people one-on-one, right? One-on-one. That's what you're going to have to do. And I trusted this guy. He knew what he was talking about, and I did it. He said, The next year he said, you're going to need a protocol. You're going to need a system, right? You can't just come up with whatever you want. You need a system, a protocol that you can share with people, and you can test it and tweak it. So that's why I came up with the Pro 90D speech system. And everything that I've done that he told me to do has been extremely successful. And it can be more successful the more I continue to tweak it and do the things that I need to do. But here's my point. I did something that I didn't want to do, and that was one-on-one coaching. Never wanted to do it. But I'm so glad that I am doing it, that I have done it, because here's the thing that I want you to listen to. There are things that you are being prepared to do that if you don't do some things that you don't want to do, you will not be equipped to step into those other things. So let me just say that again. There's some things out there, some responsibilities, right? Some jobs, some people, some opportunities that you're supposed to touch, that you're supposed to walk into, that you will not be equipped for if you don't initially do some things for a period of time, for a season that you probably don't want to do, right? Now, you don't want to go through your life doing everything, spending all of your time doing stuff you don't want to do. But the fact of the matter is, we often have to do things that we don't want to do for a period of time because it equips us. It equips us. It gives us experience. It gives us knowledge. It tests our fortitude to see if this is something that we deserve to be doing, if this is something we really want to do. Have you started out on something and then a week later, a month later, a few months later, you ran out of energy, right? You just kind of got distracted. Well, if this is something you're really called to do, you're going to know it because you're going to need to do it and you're going to keep doing it no matter what. So I want you to remember that as we talk about this lack of clarity and gaining clarity, right? Gaining clarity, that you're going to be on a journey, and as a part of this journey, you're probably going to have to do some things that you don't want to do. And that's going to help keep you focused. It's going to help keep you from drifting, right? And how do you know that you're doing things that you don't want to do, but it's probably just for a period of time? Well, you're going to look and ask yourself, do I do this extremely well? Do I do this extremely well, right? Is this positively impacting other people? And is it positively impacting me? Yes, I do this extremely well. It's positively impacting other people. It's positively impacting me. And do I feel somewhat passionate about this, right? And I'll tell you this, it's a little thing that I call map it. And then we'll wrap it up and we'll talk in the next session about how, actually I'm going to do it this way, how we do this, right? How do we gain more clarity? How? I'm going to give you some specific steps. But map it, map. So is what I'm doing meaningful to me and to others, right? Do I have the ability to do this, right? Do I have the ability to do this well? Some things you can do extremely well, or you can develop. You have the innate talent, and you have to develop it. And then finally, is this something that I'm passionate about doing? And sometimes you might not be initially passionate about it, but then you start doing it, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, look at the change that this has made. So you become more passionate about it. Does that make sense? Map it. So that's a question you want to ask yourself, and that's how you know, okay, I'm headed in the right direction. I am beginning to walk in my calling. I'm beginning to gain more clarity in the direction that I need to be moving in. So in our next message, we're going to talk about how to gain more clarity. I gave you some steps now, but in the next message, I'm going to solidify those. We're going to clarify. We're going to give you some very specific steps of how to gain more clarity. And then we're going to look at that second one, which is confidence, okay? So leave some comments. I know that this was long. You can listen to it in pieces, but listen to this while you're driving, right? Listen to this or watch this while you're driving and just take it in and think about it and ask yourself those questions that we talked about a little earlier. Because this is important stuff. Why? Because when you drift, you waste resources, you waste time, you waste talent, you waste money, and you waste opportunities. When you're clear and when you have direction and when you're focused, you maximize, right? You maximize and you get the greatest return from your time and your talents and your opportunities and your finances, right? And you make the greatest impact on other people, okay? So this is Michael Williams. Thank you so much for hanging in here with me, and I'll see you in the next message.